Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to prevent our original book analysis. Today, we're diving deep into The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. It's a Pulitzer Prize-winning masterpiece that reveals a hidden epic of American history, the Great Migration. Between 1915 and 1975, millions of black citizens left the South, seeking new lives in the North and West. But why did they leave? What challenges did they face? And what does their experience tell us about America that we might not know?
Yeah, what's captivating about The Warmth of Other Suns is that Wilkerson goes beyond dry historical accounts. She immerses you in the lives of three real people: Ida Mae Gladney, George Starling, and Robert Foster, each representing a different wave of this mass exodus. Their individual stories, meticulously researched and vividly told, illuminate the vast human drama of the Great Migration.
You really get a visceral sense of what life was like under Jim Crow. Wilkerson paints a stark picture of the daily humiliations, the ever-present threat of violence, the economic stranglehold that sharecropping placed on black families.
Right. And it's crucial to understand that the South they fled wasn't just economically oppressive, it was a place of constant terror. Wilkerson recounts a chilling story of a black minister in Florida who was stabbed for simply advising his congregation not to leave. This climate of fear was as powerful a motivator as any economic hardship.
Yeah. I was struck by the story of Ida Mae Gladney, who escapes sharecropping in Mississippi with her family. Arriving in Chicago in 1937, imagine the desperation she must have felt, pregnant and hiding it from her own mother, fearing they'd stop her from leaving.
Yeah, and her journey highlights a key misconception about the Great Migration. It wasn't just the poorest or least educated who left. Ida Mae's family had land, but even that couldn't shield them from exploitation. They saw the North as a chance for something better, a place where their children might have a real future.
Right. It's heartbreaking to read about her having to burn her son's clothes, trying to cure his seizures based on folk advice. You get a sense of the desperation and limited choices available to them. But even Chicago, the supposed promised land, didn't offer the escape they hoped for.
This is where Wilkerson masterfully dismantles the myth of a racism-free North. The forms of discrimination were different, but no less insidious. Black migrants encountered housing discrimination, relegated to overcrowded ghettos with inflated rents. Job discrimination was rampant, pushing them into low-paying, often dangerous jobs.
The book mentions the Detroit race riots of 1943. Ida Mae finds herself caught in this terrifying eruption of racial violence, living in the very neighborhood that becomes the epicenter of the riots. It's a stark reminder that the North wasn't the utopia many imagined.
Yeah, and those riots weren't isolated incidents. Similar outbreaks occurred in other northern cities, revealing a simmering cauldron of racial tensions. The North may have offered more opportunities, but it was far from a level playing field. And it's fascinating, though, how even with these challenges, many black migrants found ways to thrive. They built businesses, established churches, created vibrant cultural communities. Think of the Harlem Renaissance, the explosion of black artistic expression that emerged from the very heart of the Great Migration.
Yeah, it speaks to their incredible resilience and determination. They weren't just fleeing hardship, they were actively building new lives for themselves and their families.
Right. Like, take George Starling, the citrus picker who flees Florida in 1945 after facing threats of lynching for his activism. He arrives in Harlem and finds work with the railroad. But even there, he encounters prejudice, forced to navigate a system rigged against him.
Yeah, his story really underscores that the North offered greater freedom, but not necessarily equality. It was a constant struggle against discrimination and deeply ingrained prejudices.
And it wasn't just individual acts of racism. Wilkerson dives into the systemic barriers. Black migrants face things like redlining, where banks refuse to lend money to people living in black neighborhoods, effectively trapping them in substandard housing.
It's a reminder that while individual prejudice is harmful, it's the systems that perpetuate and amplify those prejudices that cause the most lasting damage.
Exactly. And then there's Robert Foster, the doctor from Louisiana who migrates to California in 1953. His story challenges the assumption that only the poor or uneducated migrated. He had a medical degree, yet even that couldn't shield him from the pervasive racism of the South.
It's incredible to think that a qualified doctor was relegated to delivering babies in people's kitchens simply because white hospitals wouldn't allow him to practice.
Yeah, it exposes the absurdity of the Jim Crow system and the lengths that black professionals had to go to just to exercise their skills and talents. Even in California, he initially struggled to be recognized as a doctor forced to take demeaning jobs.
So we see these common threads of discrimination woven through all three stories, despite their individual differences. It really emphasizes how systemic this problem was.
And what's also fascinating is that Wilkerson highlights the psychological toll of the migration experience. These individuals were leaving behind their families, their communities, everything they knew.
Right, the book mentions George Starling's separation from his wife, the strain it put on their relationship. It's a reminder that the Great Migration wasn't just a physical journey, but an emotional one filled with both hope and heartbreak.
And those emotional complexities are further explored through Robert Foster's marriage to Alice Clement. Her family, from a privileged Atlanta background, represented a different segment of Black society.
Oh, so it seems that this caused tension as they navigated their different cultural experiences and expectations.
Precisely, their story reflects the broader cultural shifts happening within Black communities as a result of the Great Migration. You had people from diverse backgrounds with different experiences and values coming together in these new urban environments.
Yeah, it must have been like navigating multiple migrations at once, geographic, cultural, and even social. And it wasn't always a harmonious process. There were tensions between newcomers and established Black communities in the North.
Right, and Wilkerson explores this dynamic with sensitivity. Imagine the established Black middle class in Chicago who had fought hard for their place, now feeling threatened by this influx of newcomers competing for jobs and resources.
Yeah, it's a reminder that human history is messy, and even within movements for liberation, internal conflicts and tensions can arise.
What's inspiring, though, is that amidst these challenges, Black migrants displayed incredible resourcefulness and creativity. The book details how they formed mutual aid societies, pooled resources to buy homes, created their own businesses and institutions.
It's a testament to their collective spirit and determination to build better lives for themselves.
And let's not forget the profound cultural impact of the Great Migration. The music that emerged from this era, jazz, blues, soul-transformed American culture, it was born out of the experiences of these migrants, their joys, their sorrows, their hopes for a brighter future.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in the face of oppression, human creativity and expression can flourish, shaping the very fabric of a nation.
And what's powerful about Wilkerson's book is that she connects these seemingly disparate threads, individual stories, systemic injustices, cultural transformations into a cohesive narrative that reveals the enduring legacy of the Great Migration. It's fascinating how Wilkerson tackles those negative stereotypes that surrounded Black migrants, you know?
Yeah, like the idea that they were somehow responsible for urban decay or social problems in the North.
Exactly. She dismantles that myth using hard evidence. She shows that Black migrants were, on average, more educated, more likely to be married and employed than Black people already living in the North.
So they were actually strengthening communities, not the other way around.
Precisely, but they were often relegated to the lowest paying, most dangerous jobs. They became a source of cheap labor exploited by the very industries that welcomed them.
It reinforces that the problems facing Black communities in the North weren't caused by the migrants themselves, but by that deeply ingrained systemic racism that permeated American society.
And that racism took many forms. Housing segregation, discriminatory lending practices, police brutality, unequal access to health care. I mean, the list goes on.
It's striking how Wilkerson even points out that some white Southerners who migrated north brought their prejudices with them.
Yeah, it's true. There are documented instances of white workers resenting Black migrants for taking jobs, often the very jobs white workers didn't want. And this resentment sometimes erupted into violence, as we saw with the race riots.
It highlights this complex web of race, class, and regional identity that shaped the era. And Wilkerson doesn't shy away from these complexities. She presents a nuanced portrait of this transformative period, avoiding simplistic explanations.
And that's what makes The Warmth of Other Suns so compelling. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about our history and recognize that the legacy of the Great Migration continues to shape our nation today.
So what does this all mean for us now? Like, why should we care about events that happened decades ago?
Well, for one, it helps us understand the root causes of the social and economic disparities that still plague our nation. The legacy of segregation, discrimination, and unequal opportunity continues to cast a long shadow on Black communities.
Right. It's a reminder that the fight for equality is an ongoing struggle, not something confined to a particular era.
And it's also a testament to the human spirit's resilience. Millions of people uprooted their lives, left behind everything familiar in pursuit of a better future. Their stories deserve to be heard and remembered.
The Warmth of Other Suns is more than just a history book. It's a tapestry of individual journeys woven together to reveal the profound impact of the Great Migration on American society and the enduring legacy of both the struggles and triumphs of those who dared to dream of a different life.
It's a powerful call to action for all of us to confront the ongoing legacy of racism and inequality in our own time.
So if you're looking for a book that will challenge your assumptions, deepen your understanding of American history, and leave you with a sense of empathy and hope, I urge you to read The Warmth of Other Suns. You'll find a link to purchase the book in the show notes and to explore more thought-provoking books and ideas. Be sure to subscribe to Mindful Moments. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep those minds nourished.